A very warm welcome. I do hope that you're enjoying your Monday afternoon, Monday 28th September 2015. It is a very interesting week for Kenyans because the president is at a United Nations General Assembly where he's expected to address that assembly on sustainable development goals. Those are some of the stories that we'll be discussing here on WTV News Review. Always a pleasure being your host. My name is Elijah Mwangi. I'm joined by one of the news anchors, that is Nelly Milia, to engage in a solutions-based conversation. Thank you very much, Nelly, for making time for us. How was your weekend?
Thank you too. My weekend was great. I had a good time with family and of course a bit of social setup out there.
Amazing. Now, today is a great day for Kenyans and also for the president. You know, president has been away for quite some time and he's on a mission at the United Nations General Assembly, which is dubbed as UNGA. And on top of the agenda is to address the assembly on some of these sustainable development goals. Remember, Kenya was part of the committee that came up with that post-2015 agenda. So I want us to look at basically the SDGs.
Yes.
And the first one is to eradicate poverty, that is no poverty among the member states. Remember, you're talking about 173 nations or countries.
Wow, eradicating poverty to the last bit. I think it's a bit looking at it in a bigger. It's too much to look at for now, but steps to it is important. And for instance, I applaud what the government of Kenya is doing, and one of the things is giving a chance to the women, the youth, and the physically challenged people. Priorities when it comes to bidding for tenders for the government. When you look at that, you see already it's a priority to ensure that these people who are more vulnerable in the society are given a chance to be able to earn a living. Number two, we're looking at the funds that are there in place. We have the youth funds, we have the Uwezo fund. And that way, you're able to open up your mind as a young person, as a lady, to say that, wow, I think the government is doing something good for me to be able to be sustainable, to live a sustainable life, and also to develop myself.
And you know, it's quite interesting because Kenya was from the time they started coming up with these sustainable development goals as a proposal. Kenya was part of that committee. But interestingly is that Kenya has not been doing very well. Yes, we appreciate government efforts in terms of eradicating poverty, you know, talk of Uwezo Fund, Youth Fund, Women Fund and all that. But according to the International Fund for Agricultural Development, that is IFAD, Kenya ranks 145th out of 187 countries in the United Nations Development Programme's Human Development Index. And this is what measures the development in terms of life expectancy, educational attainment, and standards of living. And nearly half of the country's 43 million people live below the poverty line. Now, poverty line, this is someone who is living with less than $1.25 a day.
Yes.
So I think it's coming at a time when we need to do a lot. We appreciate what the government is doing, but I think there's a long way to go.
There's a long way to go because one of the things that have really crippled the country is corruption. As much as a government would want to grow, would want to do the things that are needed for the country to develop, corruption has really crippled those systems. And when you look at the current government has not been there for a long time.
It's
still 4 years. And when you look at 4 years, when you look at the short time that has been in sitting, the first things that you need to do is get into the system and know the systems, how they're working. Now get to work with the people who are right, the correct people in the society. And then you need to iron out the issues that are crippling down the government. So by the time the analysis is done, you're still on your basics. That's why by the time our constitution says that you can run for 2 terms, so that by the time you're finishing to stabilize yourself, then you're able to get into the next thing. But for now, I think corruption is one of the biggest issues that is there.
And you know, Nelly, sometimes when I look at the bigger picture of corruption, we just concentrate on what the big fish are taking. For instance, you will find we are so passionately speaking about Anglo-leasing, but then when you as an individual, you are engaged in corruption at your level, you don't consider that as corruption. And I think this is why we miss it.
Yes.
Because now we only talk of the billions going, but I think someone has to ask him or herself, what exactly am I doing to eradicate corruption?
And you know why the mentality? Because it's what we are fed by the media. Us as a media, what we find is very important for the society, then we give it, and we give it in a big way. So if it's an issue of, for instance, Anglo-leasing, it's bombarded in the media, and it's in our eyes, it's on our faces for so long, and we realize that, wow, our millions are going away. How about now, the few things that are happening on the ground and are not being captured to be aired on TV?
You see, when I see the statistics here, like what I've said, that nearly half of these countries, 43 million people live below the poverty line, and they are unable to meet daily nutritional requirements. And this is according to a report done by the International Fund for Agricultural Development. It brings me to one statement, or one quote rather, that was said by the great Mahatma Gandhi. And this is what he said, Nelly. You know that in this world we have people that are so poor, such that unless God appears to them in form of bread, they may never recognize God.
It's true.
It's quite unfortunate, because we see the rural poverty in Kenya is strongly being linked to environmental concerns, especially poor water management. We have soil erosion and all that. And we'll be going to the details, because remember, we have been talking rather about some of these sustainable development goals. No poverty, that's the first sustainable development goal that every member of the United Nations, we're talking about 173 countries, member states. They are committing themselves that from 2015, we are going to make sure that there is no poverty in our countries. And yes, Nelly, just to bring you to speed, you know, we had the Millennium Development Goals in 2000. And it was like a 15 years master plan.
Yes.
So 2015 is here with us. But even as we come up with sustainable development goals, it's sad to note that not all the countries have met even the Millennium Development Goals that we set 15 years ago. Now we are looking at 2030.
Yes.
Are we still going to be talking about the same of no poverty?
As I think once the systems change, and also strategies also, the strategies implemented change, things would work out. Maybe not to end, because you see here they say UN has set a goal of ending extreme poverty by 2030 and needs up to $5 trillion a year. $5 trillion a year. I'm not sure where they plan to get that money from, but if it's from even developing countries, then I think now it becomes a bit of a tricky situation, because already some of the developing countries are struggling with the basics. So when it comes to this part of getting $5 trillion a year, then that means
it's a tall order
for most of
the
countries, yes.
And this is WTV News Review. You can always give us feedback on Twitter. You'll find us at WTVKE and use the hashtag News Review so that we can be in a position to track your conversation. On Facebook is WTV Kenya. We've been talking about the sustainable development goals that are being set by the United Nations General Assembly in New York. But now that was just the first one, no poverty, or rather eradicating poverty. There are quite a number of them. In fact, there are 17 with over 164 targets. But now we are just, for now, let's just look at the first 5. No poverty, that's done. Let's go to good health and well-being. It's one of the top priority, because it's coming as number 3. You can see that people are serious, that they want to make sure everyone is in good health. Just the other day, we were talking about the escalating, or rather the rising figures in terms of the number of teenagers who were infected with HIV and AIDS. And we are mentioning about 500,000 in Kenya. So I think this commitment of good health and well-being could not have come at a better time.
It's very true, because health is everything. When you don't have your health in order, then you cannot even be able to do the things that are needed to be done on a basic, in a very basic level. I remember our MD, Mr. B, always says, if he had the ability to do it, he would do this. He'd ensure that every small town like Kibera, Mathare, small places, especially the slum areas, trees are planted, and not just any tree. a fruit tree. The trees grow, and kids are able to just go up the trees and they just get the fruits and they eat. That way, you eradicate the fact that people can no longer say that they cannot afford fruits, because fruits are very expensive. So I think the simple ways of being able to get into getting to people to have healthy living can be done, and it starts with the individual level. We cannot all blame it to the government. I don't know what you think of that.
Exactly. Of course, it's the high time, just like what John F. Kennedy said, it's the high time that also civilians stop asking the question of what the government can do, but rather you kind of ask now the question of what am I doing for my country? And just to bring you to speed, and in terms of where we are status quo, quite some revelation here. Concerning good health and specifically maternal health care. We are going to discuss more about that, because we see 15 women die every day due to pregnancy-related complications in Kenya, and 20% of all deaths among mothers in the country are AIDS-related. Of course, Margaret Kenyatta, our First Lady, has been so passionate about maternal health care, and she launched the Beyond Zero campaign, which is basically it aims to accelerate and the implementation of nation plan towards the elimination of HIV infections among children. So First Lady, in fact, to mention, she's also at New York.
Yes.
And it's all about trying to seek a solution. Now, when I see this kind of statistics, and I see this is number 3 in terms of priority, Kenya has been struggling with quite a lot to do with maternal health care. And this is attributed also because of some barbaric cultural practices like FGM.
Yes, it's very true. And even not being aware, because for instance, if you not have solutions for a mother after delivery and they're bleeding very heavily, if you don't have a solution to it, then that's a life lost. So I think it's also about knowing what to do, because maternal deaths have been very high, and I see that in Western Kenya there's a solution that has come up on being able to curb the maternal death cases, because it is something that has really caused deaths to very many mothers,
very many people, and even
children.
Yeah, even before we go to Western, I see here, according to the Commission of Information and Accountability for Women and Children's Health, 2013, update report that is in 2012 alone, more than 100,000 children died before their 5th birthday, largely due to preventable causes. And in the same year, 13,000 new HIV infections occurred among children, and 62% of children living with HIV did not have access to the life-saving ARVs. So, talking of the solution, we must applaud that move in Western Kenya.
It's very true. And as I always say, practitioners and bodies that govern matters to do with health, it's good to get on the ground and be able to teach people. I know some of the NGOs are doing that, but it needs to be done to another level, so that people are taught and they get to know the repercussions of not doing the right things. Even as simple as vaccinations, immunizations, people overlook that, and then in the future you realize that I wish I knew. Yeah, or I wish I did it, because sometimes you just say, my child is growing well, they're doing well, they're healthy and all that. But then the aspect of always being reminded of the basics of doing it right from the beginning will really help.
Exactly, I can't agree more with that. Remember, this is WTV News Review, and today we are basing our conversation on the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, that have just been adopted by the United Nations General Assembly, where our president, that is Uhuru Kenyatta, is at the moment. And maybe you are asking yourself, what can you do? Because this is more like the bigger picture. The United Nations, that is the member countries, have decided we are going to give this priority in the next 15 years. But maybe what you can do even at the moment is talk about them. The place of information is very important, as Nelly has said. And now we take a short break, but don't go far, because we still have a lot lined up for you. We are going to quality education and matters about climate. So stay tuned, we shall be back shortly.